The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of Talk Radio AM 640.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman. AM 640.
Hi, welcome to A View from Space. I'm the Spaceman. I'd like to welcome you in right now if you're listening on the radio, driving around town, or you're at work, as I am and a few people are tonight. Or if you're just sitting around at your home, I welcome you in. If you're listening to AM 640, I'd like to welcome you in also if you're listening to me on your 3 or 4G personal communication device via the Stream the World software, or checked into Shaw Direct on channel 865, picking up the live audio streaming there. I welcome you in. Or if you're what some call the best seat in the house, to pick up A View from Space, sit in front of your Mac or your PC, logged on at home to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming. I welcome you in. Wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. Well, from where I sit, there's just a little less than an hour to go now before that infamous year of 2012 that everybody's been talking about for more than a decade. Some places that do pick up this show have already had the experience of their midnight hour past. Australia, England, places like that. Just under an hour left now as the midnight hour approaches North America. Everybody knows about the year 2012 and the Mayan calendar ending at the end of this coming new year. But what about the Mayan people? Nobody seems to know a whole lot about them. Just who were they? The Aztec civilization recognized a polytheistic mythology. Many gods, which contained the deities, supernatural creatures from their religious beliefs. Aztec culture is generally grouped with a cultural complex known as the Nahuatl because of the common language they shared. Now, according to legend, the various groups who were to become the Aztecs arrived from the north into the Anahuac Valley around Lake Texcoco. The exact location of this valley and lake of destination is somewhere you yourself might even have visited. It is, in fact, the very heart of today's Mexico City. But historically, little can be known with certainty about the origin of the Aztecs. The whole story has been hidden from you. You see, the Illuminati must conceal the fact that the bloodline of Cain were actually the ones with the knowledge and ability to first circumnavigate the globe by the stars, by instructions left behind by their Atlantean ancestors very early on, and became the conquering force to all parts of the globe. They convinced the shocked and surprised inhabitants of the other continents that they, in fact, were gods who came from out of the sea or even the sky, and this is how, I believe, the bloodline of Cain set up their religion of sun worship right around the world. The people were tricked in every case into believing it, that they were actually gods, and therefore accepted it and worshiped these descendants of Cain as gods and rightful rulers. Sort of like we do today. There are different accounts of their origin. In the myth, the ancestors of the Mexica Aztec peoples came from a place in the north called Aztlan, the last of 7 Nahuatl-speaking tribes from the Tlaca, meaning man, migrated southward, which is where their name Azteca is taken. Other accounts cite their origin Chicomostoc, the place of the 7 caves, or at Tamonachan, the legendary origin of all civilizations. It's all about caves, isn't it, with the Illuminati? For instance, Remus and Romulus were raised in a cave. The secrets of the Merovingian and Mary Magdalene connection with Rennes-le-Château were found in a cave. The Merovingian king Dagobert II, the last of the Frankish dynasty of priest kings and the last Merovingian to hold the title of Holy Roman Emperor, was buried in a cave. The Dead Sea Scrolls, found by a Bedouin in the winter of 1946 to 1947, Muhammad Ed-Dib and his cousin discovered the caves, and soon afterwards the scrolls that changed the interpretation of the King James Version of the Bible, not far from the known ruins of Khirbet Qumran that they had been known to the European explorers since 19th century. The excavated settlement of Qumran, by the way, was even mentioned in the Roman historic books with Pliny the Elder. He died in 79 A.D., so the tomb of Qumran has been around a while. The knowledge of it. These Dead Sea Scrolls that changed the way people read the Bible were found in 11 caves nearby. So you see, caves are almost sacred to these sun-worshipping writers of history. Why? Simple. When the Canaanite tribe was banished from their home in Canaan, they went to live in the mountains and hollowed out their living quarters there by scooping out the soft, easy-to-carve lava rock inside the mountain. It's also where Tubal-Cain found the fire that was hot enough to melt rock, which gave them their idea to fashion strong metal weapons. His first metal weapon? The sword. Conquering other races became quite easy after that. You see, it was the same back then as it is today. The winner, the conqueror, is the one who possesses the most lethal weapon. The Illuminati still use this formula today to heat and hammer our world into the shape they want it. There's nothing new under the sun, is there? It's simply history repeating itself. The Mexica Aztec were said to be guided by their god Huitzilopochtli, meaning left-handed hummingbird or hummingbird from the south. When they arrived in an island in the lake, they saw an eagle which was perched on a nopal cactus full of its fruits. Supposedly due to a mistranslation of an account by Tezozomoc, it became popular to say the eagle was devouring a snake, but the original Aztec accounts have the snake not even mentioned. I don't believe this myself to be a mistake at all, but in fact, a leak of information by the Illuminati, the historic writers, who wanted the world to contemplate the enigma of the snake, who, of course, is Lucifer, who is Satan. Anyway, one version states that the eagle was eating a bird, Another indicates that it was only perched on the cactus. And a third just says it was eating something. This vision fulfilled a prophecy telling them that they should found their new home on that spot. And so it was founded at the very center of Mexico City. This legendary vision is even told in the illustration known as the coat of arms of Mexico. Google coat of arms of Mexico. You get the whole story if you're in that great spot in the house to check out A View from Space in front of your Mac or your PC. It's A View from Space. I'm Spaceman. I'm just getting started on Talk Radio. AM 640.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on AM 640.
I'm the guy that calls Space. You can email me at a couple of addresses. I have two. Spaceman at 640toronto.com for one, and space at 640toronto.com the other. So I was saying before the break, the Aztecs built their city of Tenochtitlan on that site, building a great artificial island, which today is, as I've already stated on the show, in the very center of Mexico City. This legendary vision is in the illustration known as the coat of arms of Mexico. It depicts an eagle on a cactus eating something. And I can't go any farther without telling you that the tribe of Cain picked the eagle as their symbol. And each of the warring, successful empires in this entire history of man all had the eagle, or the phoenix, because the eagle is really the phoenix in disguise, as their symbol. Germany, the Roman Empire, the Americans. The eagle is also the symbol of Iraq. You see, the symbols are everything. And Cain will go nowhere without his eagle. And, of course, what better way to hide the followers of the snake than to take on the symbol of a snake eater, a destroyer of the snake, when in fact the opposite is the case. Now, you can see why the discrepancy in the coat of arms of Mexico and the legends, but very carefully crafted to actually confuse people, because when people are confused, they're easily swayed to believe one thing or another when no one's really sure what's the truth. And so people will go along with just about anything where they're in that confused state. According to the legend, when the Mexicans arrived in the Anahuac Valley around Lake Texcoco, they were considered by the other groups as the least civilized of all, but the Mexican Aztec decided to learn, and they took all they could from other people, especially from the ancient Toltec, from whom they seemed to have partially confused with the more ancient civilization of Teotihuacan. Now, to the Aztec, the Toltec were the originators of all culture. Toltecayotl was a synonym for culture. Aztec legends identify the Toltecs and the cult of Quetzalcoatl in the legendary city of Tolán, which they also identified with more ancient Teotihuacan. Because the Aztec adopted and combined many traditions with their own earlier traditions, they had many creation myths. Isn't it interesting? You'll notice through the Illuminati's cleverly manipulated information on man's history that there is that confusion being created on important key pieces of information. The confusion created on purpose, as I've said. When people become confused, you can get them to believe anything. One of these, the 5 sons, describes 4 great ages preceding this present world you and I now live in, each of which ended in a catastrophe. Coatlicue was the mother of Sentzon Huitznahua. 400 Southerners is the translation of Sentzon Huitznahua. Her sons and her daughter. She founded a ball with feathers and placed it in her waistband. A ball filled with feathers, put it in her belt. She became pregnant with Huitzilopochtli. Her other children became suspicious as to her identity of the father and vowed to kill their mother. You see, in the world of the gods and in royalty, because these people are not actually gods, they're real people, royalty of the bloodline of Cain. The children will often even kill their parents for power, and the parents will kill their children to protect their power. It's all through the Greek myths, all through the Roman myths, and of course, all through the Aztec myths, because they come from the same place. So, Coatlicue gave birth on Mount Coatepec, pursued by her children. But the newborn Huitzilopochtli defeats most of his brothers, who became the stars. He also kills his half-sister by tearing out her heart using a blue snake and throwing her body down the mountain. This act, perpetrated by the royal personages, they're not really gods, remember. They're actual people whose legends have been stretched a little bit to make them as gods. Sort of like sports celebrities. The longer time goes by, the greater the act was. Now, throwing a heart down the side of a mountain, the act was perpetrated by the royal personages of the time and was copied and turned into a ritual for blood sacrifice in the Mayan civilization, because this act of Huitzilopochtli's was said to inspire the Aztecs to rip the hearts out of their blood sacrifice victims and throw their bodies down the sides of the temple dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, of course, who represents the sun chasing away the stars at dawn. The Chichen Itza in the Yucatan province in Mexico is one of those temples that's now very popular as a tourist location that attracts millions to it each year. Imagine people flocking to a former human blood sacrifice site with a truncated pyramid known as El Castillo, which was the throwing off point for those blood sacrifice victims. Did you know that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the late afternoon sun strikes off the northwest corner of El Castillo pyramid, that truncated pyramid, and casts a series of triangular shadows against the northwest balustrade, which some believe creates the illusion of a feathered serpent crawling down the pyramid as it gets closer to the spring and autumn equinox. And of course, you know what happens when the spring and autumn equinoxes arrive. The ritual killing takes place when the shadow had crept completely down the pyramid to touch the bottom. Can you imagine? You're waiting to be sacrificed, and you'll obviously have a view of that shadow creeping down, knowing in your heart that when it does reach the bottom, so will that heart I was just talking about be. Each of the pyramid's 4 sides has 91 steps, which when added together, and including the temple platform on the top as the final step, produces a total of 365 steps, which is equal to the number of days in the year, obviously. It was a temple to the god Kukulkan, the Yucatec Maya feathered serpent deity, closely related to the deity figure Quetzalcoatl, known to the Aztecs and other central Mexican cultures. The blood sacrifice sun-worshipping Aztecs, possibly one of the most cruel civilizations in the history of mankind. Our age, Nahui Olin, the fifth age or fifth creation, escaped destruction due to the sacrifice of a god, Nanahuatl, meaning full of sores, the smallest and humblest of the gods, who transformed himself into the sun by leaping into a fire. Another god originally boasted that he would become the sun, but was too fearful of the pain. Humiliated by Nanahuatl's sacrifice, he also leapt into the fire and became the moon. This myth is associated with the ancient city of Teotihuacan, which was abandoned but still standing when those Aztecs arrived. In other words, an entire civilization of people were wiped out when these Aztecs arrived in the area known today as Mexico City. Another myth describes the earth as a creation of the twin gods, Quetzalcoatl and Quetzalcoatl. Some sources say Tezcatlipoca lost his foot in the process of creating the world, and some representations of these gods actually show him without a foot and with a bone exposed. Others say he had one foot, which was the foot of a beast, a representation of his speed. Quetzalcoatl is also called White Tezcatlipoca. This is a Spaceman on AM 640. Back with more in a moment. On the Mayans, the Aztecs, the sun worshippers from ancient days past.
You're listening to A View from Space with the Spaceman, exercising the right to free speech while he still can on AM 640.
The guy they call Space, it's A View from Space. Talk Radio AM 640. Thanks for the emails. I communicate by email. space@640toronto.com. One address, spaceman@640toronto.com. Another. DS writes, Dear Sir, sorry to correct you, but the best seat in the house is reclining with a bottle of pink champagne and you. Many thanks to you and your staff making this the best New Year's for me. Your lovable blonde, DS. And also this one from JN. Hey, Space, I was flipping through the book. Nothing in this book is true, but is exactly how things are, by Bob Frizzell. I'm sure you read it, but just in case, when I came across a reference to December 12th, 2012, the book says it has to do with the rotation of the Earth and some problem that the Greys, that's a code word for aliens, by the way, are attempting to fix through a minor tweaking of the biofields. This is on page 183, if you're interested. 183, of course, breaks down to a 12 in numerology, which is a 3, the royal number, the Trinity, the number of perfection. The only reason I am bringing this up is it makes no big deal about the date, although it's the 21st in the Mayan calendar, which I believe to be a hoax. I've heard some of these dates before with references to the 12, 24-year rotational cycles and how they coincide with the Philadelphia experiment and Montauk from David Wilcock. Just putting it out there. I like that you are so thorough. Maybe this information could be useful somewhere. Thanks for broadcasting. I look forward to your show every week. Signed, Jan. And many Happy New Year wishes. And my thoughts are with you also in this next year. So the Aztecs worshipped 91 gods and goddesses or royal family members that presided over every facet of life. Remember, just a few minutes ago I was talking about each of the Pyramid El Castillo's 4 sides. Each have 91 steps. There's a step for each god at El Castillo. The human sacrifice pyramid throw-off point that is a tourist trap for millions every year in the Yucatan. You know, I've talked to people who've climbed that El Castillo pyramid, and they get a really sick, uneasy feeling in the pit of their stomach when they reach near the top, because they know deep down inside that there's just something evil about the place. Some are just busy snapping shots with their cell phone cameras to take any notice. But each place has a vibe. And El Castillo has a very evil vibe. And you can actually feel it if you've ever been there. So, 91 steps, the same number of gods, royals, that were worshipped by the Mayans. They worshipped men and women who became the gods and goddesses. For instance, there was a goddess of love, beauty, female sexuality, prostitutes, flowers, pleasure, craft, weaving, and young mothers. There was a god of the seasons, seed germination, renewal. This god was also considered to be the patron of gold workers. They worshipped a goddess of purification from filth, disease, or excess. Another god was known as the great and ancient provider and god of rain, fertility, and lightning. It seems the forces of nature were ruled by many gods and goddesses, not just one. There was a goddess of oceanic storms like hurricanes. Another was the goddess of volcanoes, but she also provided over hearth fires. And strangely enough, an individual's personal treasure. They had a god of commerce, bartering, merchants. There was even a trickster god of indulgence and pranks. He's depicted in the Codex Barbonicus as a dancing coyote with human hands and feet, accompanied by a human drummer, an androgynous god, both sexes, who was a shapeshifter, meaning it had the ability to appear in different forms. This goddess is associated with drums and the coyote. The name Hu Coyotl actually means very old coyote. And as the drum reference hints, this is also the auspicious god of music, dance, and song of ancient Mexico. Now, not just the god of music. I didn't say that. I said the auspicious god of music. There's a vast difference. An auspice is one who looks at birds' flight, a diviner who reads omens from the observed flights of birds. In today's world, this has its meaning altered. It's now used to describe patronage and guidance, as in, oh, he's doing research under the auspices of the local historical society. But in ancient Roman sun worship, the auspices provided divine signs to be interpreted by an augur. An augur would perform a ceremony known as taking the auspices, and would read flight patterns of birds in the sky. Depending upon the birds, the auspices from the gods could be favorable or unfavorable, auspicious or inauspicious. Sometimes bribed or politically motivated augurs would fabricate unfavorable auspices in order to, well, delay certain state functions like elections. You talk about manipulating the system. It would be difficult to execute any public act without consulting the auspices in ancient Rome. And the augurs themselves were not the ones with the final say. Listen to this manipulation. Though they had the power to interpret the signs, it was ultimately the responsibility of the magistrate to make the final decisions on what direction to go. It was the Roman magistrates. They would hear the evidence provided by the augurs and what they saw in the bird's flight, and then make their judgments. Of course, these magistrates were appointed, then inaugurated in their position. See where the word comes in. And that's where the word and meaning of inauguration came from, and is still used today, as in the inauguration of a president. Oh, and it's all from divining flights of birds. It's sort of like the crazy Christian who goes, think I'll get guidance from God today, flips open the Bible, closes his eyes or her eyes, and sticks her finger on a passage and goes, okay, that's the one he meant for me today. Yeah, divine, direction of the finger to the correct page. Because that's how God, of course, communicates with us. You get the book, you point, and he tells you. Right. It's the same with the augur who looks at the birds. So you see, even if they were right, the magistrates still made the final decision, and those guys were as crooked as the day is long. Just like today. There's nothing new under the sun, only. Yeah. The most famous auspice is the one which is connected to the founding of Rome. You know the story? It goes this way. Once the founders of Rome, the twins, Romulus and Remus, raised by wolves, by the way, and royals, who again were involved in killing for power. That's why these children were raised by wolves. They were left to die. So, the twins, raised by wolves, arrived at Palatine Hill, which means possessing royal privileges, by the way, Palatine Hill. Just so you know. The two argued over where the exact position of the city should be. Romulus was set on building the city upon the Palatine Hill, but Remus wanted to build the city on the strategic and easily fortified Aventine Hill. The two agreed to settle their arguments by testing their abilities as augurs and by the will of the gods. Each took a seat on the ground apart from one another, and according to Plutarch, Remus saw 6 vultures, while Romulus saw 12. Romulus appeared to receive the more favorable signs, but each claimed the results in his favor. In the disputes that followed, Remus was killed. Ovid has Romulus invent the festival of Lemuria to appease Remus's resentful ghost, which was held on 3 days, the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th of May. It's called the Festival of Lemuria. Just wait till you hear what happened when the Roman Catholic Church got a hold of that. It's next on A View from Space. It's Talk Radio, AM 640, and I'm back in a minute.
Deprogramming the brainwashed simply by uncovering the truth. He's the Spaceman with A View from Space on AM 640.
Spaceman on AM 640, Talk Radio. You can email me at spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. Thanks so much for all the greetings tonight, the Happy New Year wishes. I really appreciate that they're filling the inbox. Usually it's information that I get or critiquing or just someone checking in to say hi from a certain country. But today, a lot of the mail is just simple greetings. so I won't read as many as I normally might. So we have the two rich, spoiled royals, Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, arguing over where the exact position of the city should be. Romulus wants it one place, Remus wants it the other. They argue. Then they agree to settle the argument by testing their abilities as augurs and to try the will of the gods. Each sat down. Remus saw 6 vultures, Romulus saw 12. After both claimed victory, Remus ends up dead. Ovid has Romulus invent the festival of Lemuria to appease Remus's death and the ghost which seems to be haunting them. And it's held on 3 days. Not all together either. One is on the 9th, the other 11, that is the 9/11, and another on the 13th of May. So they're every other day, if you'll notice, 9, 11, and 13, those 3 days, the royal number again. You see, Lemuria is an ancient ritual performed to exorcise evil and fearful ghosts from your home. Later, this festival of Lemuria, of extracting ghosts, is Christianized as the feasts of All Saints' Day established in Rome, first on May 13th by Pope Boniface IV, the last day that the ancient pagan Romans celebrated Lemuria. May 13th, turned into All Saints' Day. I've talked about this many times on A View from Space on Talk Radio, AM 640, where ancient sun worship rituals are kept intact and very cleverly and sneakily just given a new name to conceal their true reason for worshiping on that day. We are being continually tricked into acknowledging and participating in these ancient sun worship rituals through history without realizing it. Christmas is not the birth of Jesus Christ. It is the birth of the sun. The sun dies and comes back to life on the 25th. It dies on the 21st or 22nd and comes back to life on the 25th or 26th. 3 days later, just as Christ rose 3 days after being in the tomb. So, of course, Romulus names the new city Rome after himself and goes on to create the Roman legions and the Roman Senate. When you research it, the Romulus-Remus legend is a lot like the Moses legend mixed with the Cain-Abel story in many ways. There's this thing concerning the death of Remus. Listen, the Roman historian Livy gives a couple of versions of Remus's death. In the one, more generally believed one, Remus criticizes the new wall Romulus has built, and in a final insult to the new city, and as well as Romulus, he leaps over it. Romulus then kills him, saying, "So perish everyone that shall hereafter leap over my wall." So just as Cain killed Abel, his twin brother, Romulus kills his twin brother Remus. Remember, Cain is also the first ever builder of a city. Ever. The first ever city builder was Cain. In the other version, Remus is simply stated as dead. No murder is alleged. 2 other lesser-known accounts have Remus killed by a blow to the head with a spade, just as in the Masonic death of Hiram Abiff, with a blow to the head. Hiram Abiff was the builder of the Temple of Solomon, sworn to secrecy with his secrets of the numbers that were inlaid into the most beautiful building anyone had ever seen. He was to give up the information, and then he backtracked, said he would not. So, with a hammer blow to the forehead, he was killed. also used to confirm the death of a pope, by the way. This spade, this hammer, was wielded by either Romulus's commander Fabius, according to St. Jerome's version, or by a named Seller. I guess those two guys would be the equivalent of what we would call today's lone gunman cover-up. Anyway, Romulus names the city of Rome after taking an auspice, the reading omens from the observed flight of birds, and later dies at the age 53. What else? 53 breaks down to an 8 in numerology. Yes, the sun worshipper's number. Why is the number 8 the sun worshipper's number? If you track the track of the sun for one complete year, dots on the horizon and where it goes, it will actually form an 8 in its path throughout the entire year, like two circles looped. An 8, a sideways flat 8. That's why the number resembles an 8. The path resembles an 8. 8 is now taken as the sun worshipper's number. It takes 8 seconds for the sun's ray to leave the sun and come to Earth. So, taking the auspices, flight of birds, reading into it, eventually was replaced by blood sacrifice divination through inspection of a sacrificial victim's liver. The ritual was called haruspicy. Haruspicy is the inspection of entrails, guts, of sacrificed animals, especially the livers of sacrificed sheep and poultry. The rites were paralleled by other rites of divination, such as the interpretation of lightning strikes, the flight of birds, augury, and other natural omens. Babylonians were famous for this form of divination. The liver was considered the source of blood, you see, and so the base of life itself was centered there. From this belief, the Mesopotamians deemed the liver of special sheep the means to discover the will of the gods. The priest, called the Baru, it's not far from the Celtic word bard, is it? And it's for a good reason. The Celts originated in the Middle East, not Scotland or Ireland. The Baru was especially trained to interpret the signs of the liver. The liver was divided into sections, with each section representing a particular deity. And you got to know that this divination procedure wasn't just performed on sheep and chickens. No. Human beings were also included. So as I was saying, Huhu Coyotl actually means very old coyote. The name very old coyote conveyed positive meanings for the Aztec people. To the Aztec people, coyotes were a symbol of astuteness and worldly wisdom, pragmatism and male beauty and youthfulness. The prefix Huhu, which in Nahuatl, their language, means very old, was attached to gods in Aztec mythology and were revered for their old age, their wisdom, their philosophical insights and connections to the divine. And a lot of times they appeared in stories as male. Huhu Coyotl could also be gender-changing, as many of the children were of Tezcatlipoca. He can be associated with indulgence, male sexuality, good luck, storytelling. One of his prominent female lovers was Temazcaltequi, the goddess of bathing and sweet baths, also known as Mexican sauna, and Zaquiquetzal, the goddess of love, beauty, female sexuality, prostitutes, flowers, and young mothers. His male lovers included Opoctli, the left-handed god of trapping, hunting, and fishing, and Shakchipili, the god of art and games, and the patron of homosexuals and male prostitutes of Mesoamerica. As all Aztec deities, Huihucoyotl was dualistic in his exercise of good and evil. He was perceived as a balanced god. In Aztec mythology, Icolnahuacatl was a god of Mictlan, the Mayans' name for the underworld. It means strong feline or arm of puma. In Nahuatl, their language, was represented as a black-colored puma with a supernatural roar who kept the living from passing into the kingdom of the dead. Mictlan was the underworld of the Aztec mythology. It's a Spaceman on View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. Coming back with more in just a minute.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on AM 640.
I'm the guy that calls space. It's A View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. Everybody knows about the year 2012 and the Mayan calendar, but not very many people know much about the Mayan people whatsoever. So I just thought we'd touch on that tonight, and a few facts and thoughts on the year that has now fallen upon us. That infamous year that for decades people have talked about. Showtime. It's 2012. Right around the world. Emails for communication is space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. My resident numerologist SR writes, Mayan date of December 21st, 2012 can be written 12, 21, 12. 12th month, December, 21st day, 12th year of the new millennium. You see, next winter solstice falls on the 21st of December, 2012, written as my resident numerologist SR writes 12, 21, 12. And 21, of course, is a backward 12. The 12, 21, 12 breaks down to a 3, 3, 3, of course. The royal number 3 times. And in witchcraft, you can only magnify a number or a spell 3 times maximum. That's getting the maximum out of it. That's why you turn around 3 times and click your heels. That's why you knock 3 times. It's all occult mind control. Brainwashing. 3 times the charm or spell upon the people. 2012. The spell of 12, 21, 12 is now on a countdown to see what really transpires. I expect momentous, game-changing Illuminati events this year, just from my past knowledge. So in ancient Aztec mythology, Mictlan was the Mayan name for the underworld, just like the ancient Egyptian mystery religion, because there is a connection, even though they are hundreds of thousands of miles apart. As well as the dead going to Mictlan, the dead could also go to a few other places. For instance, warriors who died in battle and those who died as a sacrifice went east and accompanied the sun during the morning. Yes, they went directly to the sun. When you are said to go to the sun, you become a god-like creature. The women who died in childbirth went to the west and accompanied the sun when it set in the evening. People who died of drowning or from other causes were seen as linked to the rain god, Tlaloc, such as certain diseases and lightning, went to paradise called Tlalocan. It was a god of sacrifice of stone knives, a goddess of salt and salt water. It was a god of wind and creator of the earth, heavens, the present race of humanity. As god of the West, one of the sky bearers. His name? Quetzalcoatl, the one that is connected with the Mayan myths, the one who vows to return. A feathered serpent, a flying reptile. It's a dragon. In another culture, it's just taking another shape. Same story. The story's the same everywhere. It's another name for Satan. Quetzalcoatl was often considered the god of the morning star, and his twin brother, Xlotl, was the evening star. The exact same thing is said of Satan. He is the morning star, Venus. Quetzalcoatl was also a boundary maker and transgressor between earth and sky. He was a creator deity, having contributed essentially to the creation of mankind. He was known as the inventor of books and the calendar, the giver of maize, which is corn, to mankind, and a symbol of death and resurrection also was Quetzalcoatl. The Church of Latter-day Saints have some thoughts on this very subject, and I just bring this up because Mitt Romney, I believe, is going to be running against Barack Obama in the 2012 presidential election. And I believe Mormon Romney is going to be picked to run against Obama because then Obama can't lose. Because the sun-worshipping Mormon Mitt Romney is unelectable and will prove to be that. So Obama will have the second term in office and the 44th president. Is to die in office, according to Vedic astrology, as a consecration of the new Atlantis. And you can tell things are very ripe for an assassination in the United States, especially if austerity measures must be forced on the people by 2013. Because that's when they run out of money once again, and the debt ceiling must be raised, and more money must be borrowed. And they're going to end up like Europe. There is no money. Do with what you have. Then we're going to see some changes. So, Church of the Latter-day Saints. Some Mormon scholars believe that Quetzalcoatl, who has been described as a white bearded god who came from the sky and promised to return, was in actual fact Jesus Christ. According to the Book of Mormon, Jesus visited the American natives after his resurrection. Latter-day Saint President John Taylor wrote this: "The story of the life of Mexican divinity Quetzalcoatl closely resembles that of the Savior. So closely indeed that we come to no other conclusion than that Quetzalcoatl and Christ are the same being. But the history of the former has been handed down to us through an impure Lamanitish source." Now, in the 2004 book, The Bearded White God of Ancient America, The Legend of Quetzalcoatl, authors Donald and David Hemingway examine a theory among Conquistador-era analysts that Quetzalcoatl may have been a New Testament-era apostle of Jesus Christ, not Jesus Christ, maybe even St. Thomas. Donald Hemingway has previously taught religious studies classes at Brigham Young University. Brigham Young U, of course, is a Mormon-founded college in the United States. It's this deity, Quetzalcoatl, that is said to return one day soon. By the way, Quetzalcoatl's death is the origin of the funeral pyre. You know, a funeral pyre is a bonfire used to burn bodies of the dead. And this ritual is still done today. The Hindu religion still uses this ritual of going to the sun at death, since fire is the sun's representative here on the earth to the sun worshiper. In the West, we do the funeral pile ritual also, only we call it cremation. It's still burning the body, sending it to the sun. The ancient Druids used bonfires for blood sacrifices too. At the high witching Sabbat of Samhain, you know it as Halloween. Religious monks and others who have set themselves on fire, supposedly as a protest, and there have been a few of them just the other day, because of the winter solstice, of course, are in fact mimicking the myth of Quetzalcoatl. The myth goes this way. The god Quetzalcoatl was portrayed in a couple of ways as the feathered serpent. He was a snake with wings, or covered with feathers. He could also appear in human form as a warrior wearing a tall cone-shaped crown or cap made of ocelot skin, and a pendant fashioned of jade or a conch shell. The pendant, known as the wind jewel, symbolized one of Quetzalcoatl's other roles, that of Ethactyl, the god of wind and movement. Buildings dedicated to this god were circular or cylindrical in shape to minimize their resistance to the wind. According to most accounts, Quetzalcoatl was the son of the sun and of the earth goddess Coatlicue. The three brother gods created the sun, the heavens, and the earth. So he is a major deity, and set to return, we're told. Space, Talk Radio AM 640. I'm set to return next, too, right after the break.
He goes deeper into today's headlines than anyone else dares to go. But you can take it. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on AM 640.
I'm the Spaceman. This is AM 640 Talk Radio. You can email me at space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Thanks for the ones you've already sent me. I really appreciate it. According to most accounts, Quetzalcoatl was the son of the earth goddess Coatlicue. And as I said before the break, the three brother gods created the sun. Of course, the heavens and the earth followed. Three brothers. Royalty. Imagine, if you will, I just described Quetzalcoatl as the feathered serpent. Can you imagine someone dressing up as something so totally bizarre and weird that it attracts attention? So much so that if you've never seen it before, you might think, whoa, this is indeed something different. Just as the ancient pharaohs of Egypt had a different countenance, a different head shape. If you'll notice, they were egg-shaped and oversized because of the incest. There were all kinds of disfigurements. And that stood them out as different from any of the other regular people. So, since they were different, they could be gods. Especially if they wielded the power. Quetzalcoatl would come out of the ocean and go back in the evening, and they thought he stayed in there, but there must be some kind of a trick on on swimming away, or breathing underwater for a long length of time, just like a magician makes the coin disappear. There's a trick somewhere, and the people are all fooled, believing because they have seen. But what they have seen is an illusion. And that's what Quetzalcoatl, I believe, had going. Oh, the Aztecs. In the Aztec creation myth, Quetzalcoatl's cosmic conflicts with the god of Tezcatlipoca brought about the creation and destruction of a series of 4 suns and earths. In other words, there was a lot of killing going on. Quetzalcoatl fighting with Tezcatlipoca. And I bet you they killed all their people. Because that's what Satan wants to do, is he wants to kill every single living creature on the earth and share no power with no one. So this destruction happened in a series of 4 suns and earths, they say in the myth. And of course it's all code. We're now supposedly in the time of the 5th sun. That includes today's earth. At first, in this 5th sun that we're now under, there were no people. The Mayan myths state the inhabitants of the earlier worlds had died, and their bones littered Mictlan, the underworld. Quetzalcoatl and his twin, Xolotli, journeyed to Mictlan to find the bones, arousing the fury of the Death Lord as he fled from the underworld. Quetzalcoatl dropped the bones, and they broke into pieces. He gathered up the pieces and took them to the earth goddess, Quihuacuatl, meaning snake woman, who ground them into flour, as the myth goes. Quetzalcoatl moistened the flour with his own blood, it said, which gave it life. Then he and his brother shaped the mixture into human forms and taught the new creatures how to produce themselves. Besides creating humans, Quetzalcoatl also protected and helped them. Some myths say that he introduced the cultivation of maize or corn, the staple food of Mexico. He did this by disguising himself as a black ant and stealing the precious grain from the red ants. He also taught people astronomy, calendar making, various crafts, and was the patron of merchants. Carlos Fuentes, one of the modern Mexican leading writers, compares Quetzalcoatl with the mythic figures in history of Prometheus, Odysseus, Moses. All 3 had to leave their cultures but obtained gifts or wisdom that renewed those cultures, it seemed. Stories about a Toltec king named Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl, famed as an enlightened and good ruler, contributed a lot to the image of Quetzalcoatl as a cultural hero. His departure from his people was the work of his old enemy, his old arch-rival, Tezcatlipoca, who wanted people to make bloodier sacrifices than the flowers, jade, and butterflies they offered to Quetzalcoatl, who was not into blood sacrifice, it said. Tezcatlipoca tricked Quetzalcoatl by getting him drunk, then holding up a mirror that showed Tezcatlipoca's cruel face. Believing that he was looking at his own imperfect image, Quetzalcoatl thought he was looking at himself, but he was seeing the evil face of Tezcatlipoca. Quetzalcoatl decided to leave the world and threw himself onto a funeral pyre. As his body burned, birds flew forth from the flames, and his heart went up into the heavens to become Venus, the morning and evening star. You see, I believe this was a royal personage of the day who was both good and evil to his subjects. The Illuminati have a black and white checkered floor in Masonry. And that black and white checkered floor means exactly that. A balance of black and white, good and evil. And at the end of your life, for all of the good that you have done, you could balance it with the evil. But you had to do the good. That's why elite rich always go to charities to cleanse themselves from the evil they've been doing in other places. A balanced life is a necessity. It's the same thing with Quetzalcoatl. I believe Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl were in fact the same personage. In fact, one personality was evil, the other was good. And at times he was evil, at times he was bad. So two characters created in the myths of the Aztecs. So as Quetzalcoatl, the good guy, decides to leave the world and throws himself on this funeral pyre, he's the first to ever do so. Never before was a body burned up to go to become a sun god. Quetzalcoatl the first. Now, every time someone sets themselves afire or is cremated, or as many Hindus believe, the funeral pyre immediately after death, is all following in the footsteps and the idea of one Quetzalcoatl. Another version of the myth says that Quetzalcoatl sailed east into the sea on a raft of serpents. Many Aztecs believed that he would come back to his people one day after a period of 52 years. In the early 1500s, 1519 to be exact, that breaks down to a number 16, which is double 8 in numerology, by the way. The Spanish people of Mexico saw a conqueror, Hernan Cortez, come. He took advantage of this belief by encouraging the people of Mexico to believe him as the return of the hero god Quetzalcoatl. Just as this coming global king will also do. Believe me when I say this, there is nothing new under the sun. History will be repeated, only this time it will be the Antichrist heading up the final empire this world will ever see. Every culture has the same story. All religions, as we know them today, all say they are waiting for the one that will come to save them. For all the Latino countries, he'll claim to be the coming, returning Quetzalcoatl. In the Anglo-Saxon countries, he'll return with the proof he is the purest of the Merovingian sorcerer king bloodline, which descends from the supposed children of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene, the royal bloodline, the Holy Grail. In the Arabic world, he'll claim to be the Mahdi. Al-Mahdi is the rightly guided one, who, according to Islamic hadiths, that's traditions, will come before the end of time to make the entire world Muslim. Over the last 1400 years, many claimants to the mantle of the Mahdi have surfaced in both Shia and Sunni circles. Modern belief in the coming of the Mahdi has manifested most famously in the 1979 Al-Utay by uprising of Saudi Arabia, and most recently in the ongoing Mahdist movements, and some violent in Iraq, as well as in the frequently expressed public prayers of the Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, bidding the Mahdi to return, and also most recently in the larger Sunni Islamic world, by claims that even Osama bin Laden might now be the Mahdi, because he is now occulted, hidden. But I think I know who it will be. I've stated my belief on many occasions, as well as my reasons for it, that it will in fact be the personage we now recognize as Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge. Space back with more on Talk Radio, AM 640, next.
Deprogramming the brainwashed simply by uncovering the truth. He's the Spaceman with a view from space on AM 640.
I'm a Spaceman. It's View from Space on Talk Radio, AM 640. Yes, all of the cultures around the world all have the similar linking connection to someone that's going to return, that's going to make life better for them. And he's going to return because he has already been here. It's in every culture. But so far, the cultures and the information have not been connected, as I connect them weekly right here. But soon, proof, if you want to call it that, is going to be shown to you that indeed the three monotheistic religions were close, but didn't have the whole story. New information, new artifacts, new diggings in archaeology have found this. Because you see, there have been so much broadcast, so much written, so many movies made, stories told about the stigmatized year of 2012 that has now arrived. Billions of people around the world have wondered about the year 2012, which all came about because of the ancient Mayan calendar. And the first thing that you learn about the ancient Mayan calendar, they were sun worshippers. Attached to the creation of this Mayan calendar was this winged serpent named Quetzalcoatl, who was part man, part God. He is also expected to return. Does that sound like the Antichrist to you? He's also expected to return. Christ, only the bad guy. I've explained many times on A View from Space on AM 640 Talk Radio that the Druids, who are behind the creation of the persona of the one called Prince William, is half man, half God, because of his lineage. His bloodline, which is in fact of the bloodline of Cain. The historical Quetzalcoatl was probably born around 947 AD. That breaks down to a 20 in numerology. You drop the 0, you are left with the number 2. It means total separation from God, which is what Quetzalcoatl is. Quetzalcoatl's father, Mixcoatl, was ruler of the Toltecs. He was originally named Seactl Tupitzin, meaning our prince born on Seacatl. Seacatl is a very important Toltec holiday celebrated as the birth date of Quetzalcoatl's father. His birth came immediately before an horrendous family tragedy. The father was deposed and murdered by a jealous brother named Ihwitma. The unborn child's pregnant mother, Chimalma, fled to Tepoztlan before dying in childbirth. Chimalma declared that her infant son was divinely conceived because she had swallowed a piece of blue-green jade. Another immaculate conception. Isis claims it. Ishtar claimed it. Semiramis claimed it. Mary, mother of Jesus, also claimed it. Reared by his grandparents, Seakatl Topitsin was sent to the religious school at Sakchikalko. There he so impressed his teachers with his wisdom and piety that they conferred on him the name of Quetzalcoatl. Sound like Jesus to you, being at the synagogue? Quetzalcoatl means plumed serpent. This was a prestigious title given to persons whose behavior shows signs of an exalted state, such as that attained by a saint or a sage. Let's face it, he was royal and got the royal treatment. Returning to Tula, Quetzalcoatl defied his usurping uncle by burying the remains of his father with the ceremony to which he was entitled. He then took over as the new leader of the Toltecs by pushing the unpopular Inhuitma into a sacrificial fire. Quetzalcoatl proved to be a wise and progressive ruler, in an action that demonstrated both sensitivity and enlightened self-interest. He imported a group of talented deaf-mutes known as Noalcos to work as artisans in his kingdom. These Noalcos were descendants of the highly skilled artisans of Teotihuacan, and it was they who produced the distinctive signs for which Tula is well known. Serpent columns, square pillars ornamented with friezes, giant-sized statues of warriors. The story of Mixcoatl, the father of Quetzalcoatl, whose real name was Seactl Topitsin, has been spoon-fed to you. Did you know that? In this case, the television series Star Trek was the messenger carrier. You see, in one of the episodes, Star Trek has Seactl depicted as a Native American human who was a direct ancestor of Starfleet officer Marcus Leader Chakotay. While on a vision quest in the year 2372, Chakotay speaks to his deceased father, Kolopak, for advice about his supposed child with Seska, who had evidently impregnated herself with Chakotay's DNA. Artificial insemination down here. Kolopak spoke to Chakotay about one of his ancestors, Seactl, who was the child of an Indian and the one of the white conquerors who raped Native Americans on Earth centuries before. This, of course, links up strongly to the Illuminati belief of everlasting life through reincarnation and the knowledge needed to be gained to attain it. It's all right there in the Star Trek episode. So you see how true it is when I say that our entertainment is not really entertainment at all. It's not meant to be entertainment by the controllers. It's meant to be brainwashing into the coming new belief system to be established along with the Antichrist that will become the only religion allowed. The Antichrist system will abolish the monotheistic religions of Islam, Judaism, Christianity as the false religion that is to be blamed for all of the wars on earth since the beginning of time. Nothing new under the sun, is there? History will simply repeat itself, I assure you. Why am I so sure? Just listen. Quetzalcoatl also abolished human sacrifice and decreed that henceforth sacrificial objects be limited to snakes, flowers, small birds. It's at this point that the lines become blurred between the historical and the legendary Quetzalcoatl. Through the priests who did the blood sacrifices and held the power over the people, these would undoubtedly be annoyed by his outlawing of human sacrifice. Accounts of the actions attributed to them are obviously the work of myth makers rather than the work of responsible historians, of which I'm convinced now, totally positively, that there are no honest historians. All today's so-called historians, I'm now convinced, can be labeled myth makers. You might agree with me on that if you're following the news of what's been going on in places like Europe, Asia, and especially in the Arab countries in the Middle East lately. It's about as fictitious as it gets. So I continue with the myth. According to this version, the priests summoned an ancient god named Tezcatlipoca. That is the arch-rival of Quetzalcoatl, I guess you could say. He was the evil god. I would say the evil side of Quetzalcoatl was Tezcatlipoca. The Illuminati need to get the duality illusion of life in there somehow. So the evil god and the pro-human sacrifice priests obviously looked on Quetzalcoatl as some sort of bleeding heart liberal. What do you mean, no human sacrifices? The only bleeding hearts the pro-human sacrifice priests wanted to see were the ones torn out of the victims and laid on altars, as is stated in the writings of the Mayan culture. Deciding on a ruse, Tezcatlipoca, the evil side of Quetzalcoatl, crept into the sanctuary with a couple of minor gods, also evil, and frightened Quetzalcoatl by demonstrating a new invention, the mirror. Feigning friendliness, they disguised Quetzalcoatl by covering his body with red paint, feathers, and a mask. They served him a delicious meal, and the evil god persuaded Quetzalcoatl to drink a beverage of pulque mixed with honey. The concoction made him drunk, and the conspirators then slipped a beautiful dancing girl into his room. Did you hear that? The Illuminati still do this today, setting up high-placed people in positions of power, a blackmail by the use of sexual impropriety. So Quetzalcoatl awakens the next morning with a hangover and the horrible realization that he had broken his priestly vow of chastity. Tormented with remorse, Quetzalcoatl wanders off in self-imposed exile for 20 years and then ended up near what is today the Gulf port of Coatzacoalcos. This is where it is said he said goodbye to a loyal band of weeping disciples, promising to return at some future time. A little like the story of Jesus Christ, don't you think? That is, except the sex part. Space, back with more in a moment on Talk Radio AM 640.
Deprogramming the brainwashed simply by uncovering the truth. He's the Spaceman with a view from space on AM 640.
You can email me at two locations, spaceman at 640toronto.com is one, and space at 640toronto.com is the other. It's the Spaceman on New Year's morning, 2012. Thank you so much for the emails I've already received. I really appreciate that. So I was explaining the parallel between Quetzalcoatl and Jesus Christ. Quetzalcoatl is set up with a concoction get him drunk. The conspirators then slip a beautiful dancing girl into his room. They have sex, and in the morning, Quetzalcoatl awakens, realizing that he had broken his priestly vow of chastity. He is tormented with remorse. This is his end. Quetzalcoatl then wanders in exile for 20 years, self-imposed, ends up what is around today's Gulf port of Coatzacoalcos, where he said goodbye to a loyal band of weeping disciples, promising to return at some future time. As I remarked before the break, a lot like the story of Jesus Christ, don't you think, except for the sex part. But I want to correct myself here, because the story, the one about Jesus, hasn't really come to fruition yet. The sexual scandal, uncovering so-called proof that Jesus had actually escaped the cross, then later had sex with Mary Magdalene, that began the Merovingian dynasty of Frankish kings who ruled over the parts of modern-day France and Germany from the 5th to 8th centuries. It's a 13, by the way, a hidden 13. The Merovingian kings perpetuated myths concerning their being of divine descent, as demonstrated by their continued military successes. The author of Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and the Da Vinci Code run with this myth and concoct a connection between Jesus' supposed marriage to Mary Magdalene and their supposed descendants. The hypothesis is that Jesus' descendants intermarried with the Merovingians, giving the line of kings divine authority. So, back to the myth of Quetzalcoatl. He sails for the Yucatan, now a province in Mexico, where he became equally admired by the Maya, who called him Kukulkan. Finally, some 30 years later, he died by immolating himself on a self-made funeral pyre. And what bird immolates himself and then rises out of the smoke and ashes anew? Why, the phoenix, of course. Same as Quetzalcoatl. Legend has it that Quetzalcoatl was tall and light-skinned with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a beard, in contrast to the natives who were short, dark-skinned, and dark-haired. He's said to have worn a long, flowing robe. Quetzalcoatl was supposedly special because he was one of the gods of creation. How about this? He wasn't from that area of the world. He was one that circumnavigated the globe and landed there from another world beyond. The other side of this world, where they are tall, light-skinned, with blonde hair and blue eyes. That's why they thought he was a god. The Incans believed that he made the sun, moon, stars, and planets. The Mayans believed that with Tepu, another god, he helped create the earth, the mountains, streams, and all animals. But his final creation was man, because of other forms of life could not think about worship their creator. His name translates to mean plumed serpents, green-feathered serpent, or precious feathers. They all suggest a combination of Quetzal, a beautiful green Guatemalan bird, and Coatl, meaning serpent. You see, the serpent is both a fertility and lightning symbol among many peoples. The King James Version of the Bible states in Luke 10, line 18, that Satan came to earth as a lightning bolt. There's your connection with Zeus, too, as just another name for Satan, another mythology with the same basic ingredients in another civilization. But all the same, just the names have changed. Zeus was the king of the gods, the god of sky and weather, law, order, and fate. He was depicted as a regal man, mature, with sturdy figure and dark beard. His usual attributes were a lightning bolt, royal scepter, and the ego, as I explained earlier. I'm stating my case tonight that all religions and myths all over the world, in every single culture on planet Earth, are interwoven, intertwined, and twisted together to connect them all to what we'll all be told will be a common origin. Let me just show you what I mean. Believe it or not, there's a connection from the ancient Mayans to Egypt and Sumeria, where it all began, with the bloodline of Cain. This whole plot to ensnare the world. Ancient Mexicans and Egyptians who never met and lived centuries and thousands of miles apart both worshipped feathered serpent deities. Both built pyramids, developed a 365-day calendar. Are you hearing me? Cleopatra, the last Egyptian queen before the Roman conquest of Egypt in 30 BC, saw herself as Isis and wore a gold serpent in her headpiece. Isis, of course, was the wife of Osiris, the highest-ranking deity in the ancient mystery religion of Egypt. The premier sun god, Osiris. In Sumerian mythology, they were a pantheon of good and evil gods and goddesses who came to Earth to create the human race. According to some resources, these gods came from the planet Nibiru, known as the planet of the crossing. The Assyrians, Babylonians, called it Marduk, after their chief god. That's not all, there's more. In multiple cultures, there's an allusions to a snake god. A snake god that visits different lands and duplicates the virgin birth prophecy in order to usurp the coming Messiah's validity and authority. Sounds like the Christmas show on A View from Space that was broadcast last week on Talk Radio AM 640 involving Herod and the baby Jesus, doesn't it? The similarities just simply go on and on. For instance, there's also shared designs in architecture, with Egyptians building pyramids as royal tombs, and the Mayans and Aztecs doing the same with pyramids as places of sacrifice to the gods. So let me quickly recap from the information I've provided you. Quetzalcoatl is a feathered snake with blue eyes, blonde hair, a beard with a long flowing robe, green feathers that looks like a snake. A snake with feathers is one thing, but a snake with a beard? It sounds like a mix between the European Jesus pictures you see, a pretty bird, and the old serpent we call the devil. It wouldn't be at all surprising to me, and possibly now to you too, that if Lucifer, who is really Satan, returned as Quetzalcoatl, trying to look like and act like Jesus so he could convince people to believe in him. Or more accurately, I should explain, if a man with supposed proof of his lineage to Jesus Christ and the house of David came on the scene claiming to have the answers to all the world's problems, was involved in a Masonic ritual rebirth where his old self dies, he is then resurrected as a new creature, which is the allowance of this willful king to be then possessed by Satan himself, who will then take this body donated to him to rule this coming global system. There are even more connections. These involve Quetzalcoatl, the planets, and their transits. Remember, earlier in the show, I stated that Quetzalcoatl was often considered the god of the morning star. This links Quetzalcoatl to the planet Venus, and by extension, Venus's transit across the sun as seen from the Earth. That event is due to take place this year. In 6 months, 5 and a bit actually, the final transit of Venus occurs. More on the other side of the break on this on Talk Radio, AM 640, and A View from Space.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on AM 640.
I'm the guy they call Space. This is A View from Space on Talk Radio, AM 640. I communicate by email. You can email me. I have 2 locations. Spaceman at 640toronto.com is one, and space at 640toronto.com the other. Thanks for the ones I've been sent. I truly appreciate it. For all of you that have emailed me wishing me a Happy New Year, the same to you. So, before the break, I was talking about connections, the planet connections with their transits. Quetzalcoatl linked to the planet Venus, by extension, the Venus transit across the sun, as seen from the Earth, takes place later this year in about 5.5 months. Transit of Venus is one of the rarest of predictable astronomical phenomena to occur. They occur in a pattern that repeats every 243 years only, with pairs of transit, 8 years apart. Yes, the sun worshippers number, separated by long gaps of 121.5 years and 105.5 years. You see, before 2004, which was the last transit of this pair of transits, occurred in the month of December in the year of 1874, and the second transit came 8 years later in December of 1882. Now, the very first of a pair of transits of Venus, the planet, crossing the sun as seen from the Earth, in the beginning of this 21st century, a 3 in numerology, the royal number, took place on June 8th of 2004. And the second of this twin package of transits will be coming on the 6th month of the new year, 2012, on the 6th day. That would be June 6th, 2012. The next time Venus transits the sun, again, crosses the face of the sun from the vantage point of the Earth, the month of December in the year 2117, the first appears. And then its twin will show up December of 2125. The first one is 105 years away. I know it's quite safe to say that there will not be anyone that's here now on Earth that'll be here to witness those next transits of Venus. This June 6th, 2012 appearance of Venus on the face of the sun is going to be the last ones. anyone on this planet will ever see. That's how rare the transit of Venus is. We'll all be what you call dead down here. I just have this feeling that the Illuminati aren't going to let this extremely rarest of predictable astronomical phenomena to go by without using its enormously spiritually charged symbolism for some great earth-shattering event on or near it to occur. Think about the connotation here. As Venus, the goddess of love, Quetzalcoatl returning. Really, the female incarnation of Satan as Venus appears to come together as viewed from the earth, coming to a position directly on top of the sun. God itself to the Illuminati for a sexual union just before the games are to begin that are dedicated to those ancient gods of the past. In the town that houses the gods of the future. The 2012 London, England Olympiad will be the 30th modern-day Olympiad, the royal number again, which will be held for the third time in London. Again, the royal number. It will be held in the home of Prince William, London, England. Now, are you going to say the C word here to me? The C word, of course, stands for coincidence. Well, here's your coincidence. Quetzalcoatl is supposed to return again during a conjunction of some sort with the sun. No, I'm not done yet. There's even more connections with Quetzalcoatl and the planet Nibiru. Many involved in research with this kind predict a returned date of Nibiru passing Earth coinciding with the winter solstice of 2012. Specifically at the time of 11:11 Universal Time, the 21st of December 2012, the winter solstice. In 1993, the highly occult organization known as NASA launched the IRAS telescope, which picked up the faint image of a large celestial body, they say 3 times the distance of Pluto in our solar system, we're told. Quetzalcoatl was driven into exile. In one legend, according to the legend, he left the Atlantic coast of Mexico on a raft made of serpents and vowed one day to return on a day of his own energy. Quetzalcoatl has yet to return either from Venus or the east. Asiactl, or 1 reed year, is a scheduled time forecast for their god Quetzalcoatl to return. It's been suggested many times by New Agers, occultists, that the energies of Christ and Quetzalcoatl, Satan, are the same, or at least closely associated. You see, many believe that Jesus Christ and Lucifer are brothers. So, is this what all the 2012 brainwashing hoopla was all about? Are we being groomed for the return of Lucifer as the Christ in or about near this year of 2012? The time of enlightenment and global human consciousness the New Agers have been predicting. No evil is confronted in this view. People reorientating their conscious to create positive energy in the world. Really? A big-winged snake is coming to fuse us together and make us one with him and the universe? They believe the date December 21, 2012, represents a cosmic event of great note to human spiritual progression. The 2012 conjunction of the winter solstice, the sun with a dark rift near the galactic center, and the start of a new precession cycle, and a new Maya long count calendar start. We'll be told something like, this offers the world the chance, as a species, to align with the cosmic energies of massive positive change. You see, the occultist believes that we can consciously choose to rapidly evolve our civilization and our physical and spiritual selves at that time. I've yet to explain, though, what was meant by the prophecy that Quetzalcoatl should return from the east after or around the year 1000 AD, when he disappeared on a raft. I should first point out that since then, the year 1000 AD, many pairs of Venus transits have occurred that didn't bring the return of Quetzalcoatl. The most recent examples of such pairings of the transits of Venus are those of 1518, and the second twin coming at 1526. Then there was the event of 1631, followed by the second transit in 1639, which was followed by the 1761 and the 1769 transits, and the last complete pair in 1874 and 1882 did not bring Quetzalcoatl back. More on this when I return on A View from Space on Talk Radio, AM 640. Back in a minute.
He goes deeper into today's headlines than anyone else dares to go. But you can take it. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on AM 640.
Spaceman, AM 640, View from Space, Talk Radio. You can email me at space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Before the break, just want to recap. I was talking about the pairs of Venus transits that have occurred since 1000 AD. There have been a few of them, but every 105 years or so, this rare celestial phenomenon happens. We've had our first one in our latest pairing in 2004. The second one is due to come June 6, 2012. So we've gone through quite a few pairs of Venus transits without the return of Quetzalcoatl. So why should we expect a return of Quetzalcoatl this time when it didn't happen on those previous Venus transits? I have a good reason why it wasn't pulled off on those other transit dates, and it's simple. Because, number one, the technology to make this look real wasn't ready, but now the International Space Station is completed, and men have been put out there far above us, out there 24 hours a day, 366 days a year. A celestial show can now be staged. Plus the fact that Prince William, the potential willful king, is near ready and turns 30 years of age June 21st, 2012, just a few days after the final transit of Venus. Remember, if Prince William is going to play the role of Quetzalcoatl, of Jesus Christ, Jesus started his ministry at age 30. Prince William turns that in June. What's more, if Prince William is to be Antichrist. He must be able to convince the Jews he is their Messiah. That prophetic fact means he must be at least 30 years old before he comes on the scene. But most important of all is the prophecy. Remember me saying on the show that the Illuminati are going to follow the King James Version of the Bible to the letter? The prophecy stated in Daniel 9, lines 26-27 states that the Antichrist shall be a prince. He is not foretold to be a king, but a prince. Therefore, it may be highly significant prophetically that Charles is not a king, nor may he ever be king. He may always be a prince. Check out the prophecy again. It's in the book of Daniel. As I've said over and over on A View from Space, on Talk Radio AM 640, that the Antichrist will come from the tribe of Dan, who have in them the bloodline of Cain, the rejected 13th tribe of Israel. The prophecy is assigned to chapter 9, Satan's favorite number, because it always returns back to itself. The egotistical number. For instance, 9 times 9 is 81. 8 and 1 are 9. 2 nines are 18. Another 9. 3 times 9. You see what I mean? It always returns to itself. So I ask, is it time for Lucifer to show up? We'll soon see. There are other links, too, connecting Quetzalcoatl and a visitation from outer space, the phenomenon known as crop circles. Crop circles and aliens. We're being brainwashed to believe these intricate designs made in fields are made by aliens with their technology. So who are the aliens? Or who is the alien making these circles? Could the technology aboard the International Space Station be the cause of these alien designs? Quetzalcoatl will save us from them. Remember, the Antichrist will be able, as the Bible says, able to understand dark sentences, meaning he will be able to communicate with the aliens and will reveal he is related to them and has been chosen by his ancestors to interpret for us all the demands of the aliens. Because if you've ever examined a crop circle, they try hard to convince you that someone supernatural is behind them. The crop picture effort seems to be spiritual. From this explanation of the pleasing Mayan images that are created in these crop circle symbols, the Illuminati want you to believe that it's possible that Quetzalcoatl and his friends, the aliens, the demons, are trying to connect with us on some deeper level so that we can make face-to-face contact in the near future. The circles are definitely messages of some sort. This phenomenon, known as crop circles, I believe are man-made. They are not alien creations. Because, I'll tell you what, I have seen the enemy. And the enemy is us, men. Therefore, the rest of the hoax is played out by getting things the Illuminati is in control of, like governments and the media, to reaffirm the lie that most Earth governments and the media do not want him to come. because they would then lose power. Will we eventually meet Quetzalcoatl and his friends, the aliens, demons? In early 2013, when the Mayan fifth sun ends and a sixth sun begins, or will it be somewhat later, 2039, which is a year in the Mayan calendar called one reed? Quetzalcoatl always told the Mayans that he would return in a year, which is one reed, which happens once every 52 years. When Cortez invaded Mexico in 1519 A.D., it was a year one reed. And of course Cortez played upon the beliefs of the Mexicans that he was the returning Quetzalcoatl. Likewise, in 2039 AD, or 520 years after 1519 in Cortez, it will be another year, one reed. This is all speculation and legend, of course. We don't really know for sure. But something is afoot. 2018, again. Jesus said that this generation that saw the end-time signs would not pass away until all things had been fulfilled. That's in the King James Version of the Bible. Many say a generation is 40 years, others say 70. If you calculate the number of generations that have been generated from Adam all the way to Christ in the book of Matthew, and consider the total number of years, you arrive at this number, 51.4 years, which is close to 52 years for a generation. The count starts from when Israel sprouted its leaves, the mature tree, June 10th, 1967. Add 52 years, you arrive at June 10th, 2019. So if you use this 52 years as a generation, one might think that the end-time tribulation and wrath is completed by that time, by 2019. If corrected to 51.4 years, you would subtract 7.2 months from June of 2019. Since each 1/10 of a year equals 1.2 months, the final end would occur about December 2018. So 2012 and 2018 is coming. But what or who is coming with it? Now, when the attacks of 9/11 occurred, I easily counted 18 instances where the events occurred by the numbers, sacred numbers of 11. I believe the attacks of 9/11 were the first shot in the start of the third and final World War, which will bring about this new world order, this new global system. Because it will take some cataclysmic event to force people to accept losing their borders, losing their system, and connecting globally. The Bible states that the Antichrist will be the 11th horn to appear on the world scene. Daniel 7, lines 7 and 8. And the Illuminati recognize 11 as one of the major numbers of their Antichrist. When you look at the numbers inlaid in the attacks of 9/11, which occurred by the 11s, and look at the significance of 11 in history, you will see the forcing of the hand of the Illuminati fulfill biblical prophecies. It's a View from Space. Back in just a second on AM 640 Talk Radio.
You're listening to A View from Space with the Spaceman, exercising the rights to free speech while he still can on AM 640.
Well, the guy they call Space, it's View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. You can email me at spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. Yes, the Illuminati recognize the number 11 as one of the major numbers of their Antichrist. Let me take you back to the very beginning of the show tonight. The Dead Sea Scrolls, founded in 1947. 47, the year 47, is an 11. 7 and 4 are 11. Now, they were found in 11 caves, these Dead Sea Scrolls, that changed the way people interpret the Bible. I say there's more of these to come. More earth-shattering information to be disseminated. And if it has the 11 connotation to it, you will understand that the Illuminati have carefully placed their fingerprints all over the event. Why would they do this? They would want to hide the truth from the masses, wouldn't they, while communicating it to the elite occultists all over the world? To properly comprehend, you need to understand that the occultist literally fulfills Paul's explanation of a pagan, of a Satanist in Romans chapter 1, line 25. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie, worshipped and served the creator or the creature rather than the creator. Romans 1:25. The Satanist always places great power in numbers, especially the black magic Satanist. Daniel 8, line 23 through 25 states the religion that will be practiced by the Antichrist is black magic. What's more, Revelation 17:17 says that the final 10 kings are of the same mindset and religion as the Antichrist. Check the numbers, Revelation 17:17, a double 17. Of course, invoking the death date of Osiris, the sun god, on the 17th of the 3rd month of Athir in the Egyptian calendar. Satanists believe that a carefully planned event must be carried out according to the correct numbers, or it will not be successful. They go to great lengths to make an event occur according to the correct numbers. So the number 11 is the essence of all that is bad, imperfect, sinful, harmful. While 11 is very important, multiplication of its digits are also important, like a double 11, a 22 rather, a 33, a 44, a 55, a 66, and so on. So don't be surprised to learn that the attacks of 9/11 occurred on an 11. There are 18 ways in which this event was undergirded by an 11 or by a multiple of it. The World Trade Center towers represented the old system, you see. The old American empire, whose time is up. 11 years to the day was on September 11, 1990, where President George Bush Sr. delivered a speech to the Congress entitled, "Moving Toward a New World Order," precisely 11 years to the day after he delivered that speech, praising the New World Order and declaring it to be an inevitable fact. A mighty blow was struck to move the world much, much closer to the implementation of this new global system. I found this historical fact exceedingly interesting because it reveals the degree of conspiracy which underlies the entire Illuminati plan to overthrow the old world order so the new world order can be established. This brings me to the reason I think that 2012 might be the year of the beginning of the rise of the Antichrist. Keeping in mind that Bush Sr. addressed the Congress on the subject, moving toward a new world order precisely 11 years before the attacks of September 11, 2001. He did the speech 11 years later, exactly to the day the event happened. I wonder if the Illuminati plan calls for precisely 11 years between the attacks of 9/11, 2001, to the time when the Antichrist begins his quest, or to the time of the 91-day Third World War begins. Yes, you heard me correctly, 91-day Third World War. That will establish him on the world scene. That number came up earlier, twice in the show. 91 steps on El Castillo, the truncated pyramid, in the Yucatan, at Chichen Itza. And there were 91 gods and goddesses worshipped by the Mayan sun worshippers. The Third World War will be a 91-day war that will establish the Antichrist on the world scene. So the time differential would be September 11, 2001 to September 11, 2012. Exactly 11 years. Please remember, I am not, repeat, not making predictions. But this last calculation makes a lot of sense. I'm not making a specific prediction on when the Antichrist will begin his climb. I mentioned the exact date, September 11th, just as a point of reference. Oh, and by the way, September 11th is the Jewish New Year. Happy New Year. Now, the ones to come, the Merovingian dynasty, back again. Merovingi's human father, Merovingi was the beginning of the Merovingian sorcerer king's reign. The human father and mother descended from the people known now as the Sicambi, who were in fact the Scythians and Cimmerians. Now, these were not of the line of Judah or Levi, as the British royals are trying to claim, because I believe they are in fact descended from the tribe of Dan. When the tomb of Childeric, the first son of Merovingi, was discovered and opened in 1653, a cave, of course, there were found among the items in his tomb 300 miniature bees of solid gold. Napoleon had these 300 golden bees sewn onto his coronation robe, worn when he crowned himself Emperor of France. Napoleon thought, that he was the one to come to rule the world. He was convinced. When he married Marie-Louise Habsburg of Austria, she wore a royal robe with the bees interwoven throughout. The bees represent a very important clue as to the lineage of the Merovingian dynasty. In the ancient Babylonian and Egyptian mystery religions, bees represented royalty as it did in France at the time of Charlemagne. The fleur de lis of France is not really a flower at all, but is a stylized bee developed from other ancient times. The honeybee is a symbol of Lower Egypt, and the pharaoh's title as king and wearer of the red crown was Nibet, who belongs to the bee. That's its meaning. The bee is a symbol of Neith, the mother of gods from whom Pharaoh is said to have descended from. The honeybee is mentioned in the scrolls of the Orient, the Talmud, the Torah, the Quran, the Bible, the Book of Mormon, and are symbols of gods and deities. In the Mormon religion, the honeybee symbolizes the real, ideal society. The bee appears as the symbol of the soul and symbol of chastity. A blue bee resting on a lotus flower is the symbol of Vishnu, the Indian god known as the preserver. Bees are often considered a symbol of the goddess or divine feminine because they are ruled by queens, and the bee is the symbol of the goddess of regeneration. In Christian tradition, the bee was the symbol of Christ, of his forgiveness. It's also an ancient Minoan symbol of the soul. The bee in all ages and nations has been a symbol of masonry. For this reason, the kings of France, both pagan and Christian, always eminent Freemasons, carried out 3 bees for their arms. The bee for a Mason is a symbol of being industrious, and the beehive is an emblem and a symbol of industry, given in the 3rd degree of Masonry. Now, the beehive is exactly how the Illuminati want this new global system to be run. The hierarchy in the beehive, the queen, all work to support the queen in the hive. She is the only one that gets the royal jelly and eats it. There are actually bees that are bred to do just certain jobs. I believe that's what our world is coming to already. It already has come to this. Take the world of sports, for instance. Children are being bred from big mothers and big fathers to become custom-made baseball players, hockey players, football players, soccer players. You hear it all the time. Oh, his dad was this, his dad did that. His mother was a big athlete, too. They are actually being genetically tinkered with to perform a precise job in this new system. Spaceman, AM 640, and A View from Space. Back with more. The other side of the break.
Deprogramming the brainwashed simply by uncovering the truth. He's the Spaceman with A View from Space on AM 640.
I'm the guy to call Space. It's A View from Space, Talk Radio AM 640, final segment tonight on the show. Just to finish off the thought of the world being shaped and run, not shaped, but actually run like a beehive, with royalty at the top eating the royal jelly, and no one else may touch it. Drones do their job. Worker bees do their job. It's like the custom-made persons in our world today. Our CEOs are all from the elite rich families who are all very highly educated, who are already touted for a job. They're being groomed to be the next CEO of BP, the next CEO of Hewlett-Packard. Well, they just rotate them. When they get fired from one job, they're off onto their next job. Because, you see, that's their place in the beehive. And everyone must have their place. If you're a worker bee, you will forever be a worker bee. And you will have children that will be worker bees. I lived in England for a time. I really wanted to live there. My grandparents from there. Had a house there. Went there to work. Was working all kinds of part-time jobs. I couldn't get any kind of a job whatsoever that paid any kind of money whatsoever. I had to come back to North America. But I would have preferred to stay there, but it's such a caste system that if you're born an unemployed coal miner's son, that's what you'll be. You'll be the son of an unemployed coal miner. And you will grow up to be an unemployed coal miner also. There's only two ways to make any money on that island if you're not in the flow, the correct one, and that is to be a rock star. Get out of there with music, or if you have a gift, playing football. And that's even changed now, because now the lineage of the football stars are taking their positions of their fathers, just like the beehive. So there are even prophecies in the Bible that point to the fact that the tribe of Dan will produce the Antichrist. In the context of these prophecies, I think Samson's riddle is a prophecy that the descendants of the tribe of Dan will one day try to destroy the tribe of Judah in jealous revenge. The Merovingians, who plan to rule the world from their future throne at Jerusalem, claim to come from the tribe of Judah through Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. But this, I believe, is a lie, and the weight of evidence indicates that they are descended from the tribe of Dan, although the Bible states that Samson was of the family of the Danites. Judges 13:2, to connect the Merovingians to the house of David. His lineage supposedly also includes the messianic tribe of Judah. Samson, the Superman hero, came from the tribe of Dan, but his mother was from Judah. Samson, in some respects, was considered a forerunner of the Messiah, who will come from Judah, but his mother, according to the Midrash, was of the tribe of Dan. There were 3 barren women in the Bible. They were the mother of Samson, can find no name for her, Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist, and Hannah, the mother of Samuel. The history of the tribe of Dan. 721 BC, the tribe of Dan began migration from Israel to Sparta, to Troy, to Europe, where they would become the Merovingian nobility. So we have the migration of the tribe of Dan after having been pushed out of their territory west of Jerusalem, then went north into Lebanon. The story is found in Judges 18. According to the chapter, the tribe of Dan established an idolatrous religion there, the worship of the sun and the moon. The summation of their move is given in the book of Judges. And they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their father, who was born to Israel. At first, the city was Laish, then changed to Dan. And the children of Dan set up the graven image, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, and the son of Manasseh, he and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan until the day of captivity of the land. That's recorded in Judges 29 through 30. According to the story, the tribe of Dan moved into Lebanon, where they lived for at least the next 600 years. 721 BC, the Assyrians took the northern 10 tribes captive. The Spartans lived in Laconia, near Arcadia, in the southern Greek peninsula called the Peloponnese. Over the centuries, some of them migrated northeast across the Aegean Sea to build the ancient city of Troy. There came a time when Paris, the Trojan prince, fell in love with Helen, wife of the Spartan king, kidnapped her, and took her with him to the city of Troy. By the way, Paris was the one that the City of Lights was named after. There's also a city in France named Troy, after the ancient Trojan capital. This is for the Merovingian French royalty who claimed descent from the Trojans. As you can see, the evidence mounts that the tribe of Cain was in the family of Dan. Over the centuries, some of the Spartans migrated to southern France. Some of the surviving Trojans moved north, west to Bavaria, Germany, Belgium, northern France, following the Danube River, eventually settled into the region that became known as Austrasia in the province of Lorraine. That's the one where you see now, if you're watching the World Junior Championships of hockey, you see the Cross of Lorraine on the Slovakian hockey jersey. That double cross. That's the part of the world I'm talking about now. The image of the Merovingian kings, therefore, may have been rooted in the Trojans. Here's the Webster Dictionary definition of Cimmerian. Any of a mythical people described by Homer as dwelling in a remote realm of mist and gloom. The Cimmerians, which migrated west of Asia Minor and West Europe, and Assyria first, and the second group of Scythians who later migrated west to take over as many of the Cimmerians' lands. The ancestry of the peoples of Europe and Asia Minor can be traced to modern times. Cimmerians are the Celts, ancestors, also the Gauls, the Normans, the Norse, the Goths, the Germanic peoples. A migration to ancient Britain by the Angles, Saxons, Isaac's sons, would also form the several Welsh, English, Scot, and Irish peoples. These various peoples of seemingly different ancestry have mixed to make up the founding ancestral nations of today's Europe. And those people who formed Europe all have one major trait in common. Even though they had different names and languages, they made up the Caucasian race who settled in Europe. Britain's history, especially the various conquests of Britain, was supposedly different nations of heritage, like the Anglo-Saxons of Germany, the Danish, the Norse, and then finally the Normans of France. It should have been made up of many different races. All these various peoples which invaded Britain were of one common stock, either descendants of the Cimmerians or the Scythians, and they all have a heritage as being part of the tribe of Dan. The tribe of Dan was given the symbol of Scorpio, which in the ancient Egyptian zodiac was a snake. Though, when the time came to hoist the symbol of the snake, Adjezer refused and chose instead the symbol of an eagle. Dan's position in the journey was on the north of the tabernacle with Asher and Naphtali. The standard of the tribe was of red and white, and the crest an eagle. The great enemy to serpents, which has been chosen by the leader instead of a serpent, because Jacob had compared Dan to a serpent. Adjezer substitute the eagle, the destroyer of serpents, as he shrank from carrying an adder on his flag. It may prove worthwhile to consider the possible connection to the tribe of Dan. Whenever an eagle is used as the symbol of later leaders or nations, here are the clues which could connect the tribe of Dan with the political leaders of Greeks, Romans, French, Germans, all the thrones of Europe, including the leaders of ancient Tsarist Russia, Iraq, Poland, and the United States of America. The symbol of imperial Rome was a single-headed eagle, but after Constantine divided the empire in the 4th century A.D. and moved his throne to Constantinople, a two-headed eagle evolved as the symbol of the Byzantine Roman Empire, which is about to be restructured. It's now called the Eurozone. That and more is what we have lying in wait for us as this year 2012 unfolds. This has been A View from Space. Talk Radio AM 640. Coast to Coast next. I'm Space, and I'm out.